Richard Cole, a billionaire CEO known for his sharp business mind and ruthless decisions, stormed into his private estate early that morning. He had an important investor meeting in just a few hours, and his prized luxury helicopter, a symbol of his power and wealth, was broken. The engineers he had hired were already there, peering at the complex machine with frustration on their faces. Despite their expensive training and experience, none of them could find the problem. Richard's patience had already worn thin. He was used to things running smoothly, to having complete control over every situation. Seeing the helicopter grounded and the clock ticking made him furious. He paced back and forth, his expensive leather shoes echoing on the polished floor. "This is unacceptable," he snapped, slamming his hand on the table. The engineers flinched but remained silent, trying not to provoke his anger further. In the corner, quietly sweeping the floor, was Maya, the maid's daughter. She was only 17, with dark hair tied back in a simple braid, and clothes that marked her as someone who worked hard for every penny. She was helping her mother during summer break, hoping to save money for college. Most of the people in the room didn't notice her at all. She had always been invisible in these grand estates, a background figure whose only purpose seemed to be keeping the floor spotless and the rooms tidy. But that morning, Richard's temper turned toward her. He looked over at Maya with a mocking grin. "Maybe you can fix it," he said, pointing at the grounded helicopter. "If you can make it fly, I'll give you $100 million. The room erupted with laughter. The engineers laughed at the absurdity. The pilot chuckled nervously, and even some of the staff shook their heads at what they assumed was a joke. Maya, however, didn't laugh. She just stood there, holding her broom, and looked at the helicopter calmly. "Deal," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, but there was a certainty in it that made the room go silent. People blinked at her, unsure if she was serious. Richard stared at her, waiting for a laugh, a mistake, a moment of weakness. But Maya's eyes were steady and focused, as if she had already thought through exactly what needed to be done. What no one in the room knew was that Maya had been teaching herself about machines and electronics for years. Her late father had been an aircraft mechanic, and he had shown her the basics before he passed away. Since then, Maya had spent countless hours reading books and watching online videos about engines, circuits, and mechanics. She didn't have formal schooling in engineering yet, but she had the knowledge and determination to tackle problems many professionals couldn't. Maya stepped closer to the helicopter and carefully examined the exposed parts. The engineers were amused, whispering to each other that this girl couldn't possibly do anything. They were wrong. Maya's hands moved with precision as she opened panels and traced wires, valves, and fuel lines. She noticed something that no one else had. A small but crucial valve was blocked, causing a pressure imbalance in the fuel system. "Where did you learn this?" one of the engineers asked, surprised, but Maya didn't answer. She simply began working, improvising with the small tools she was given. She used a screwdriver, some wires, and materials found nearby to temporarily fix the valve. She worked steadily, her focus unbroken by the stifled laughter and doubtful glances around her. Richard, growing impatient, began pacing again. He had expected her to fail, to break something, or at least to run away embarrassed. But Maya's confidence and calmness unnerved him. He watched as her small hands moved with care, twisting wires and adjusting valves. The silence in the room was tense, broken only by the occasional clink of metal and the hum of machinery. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity to the people in the room, Maya stepped back and wiped her hands on a cloth. "Try it now," she said quietly. Her voice held no arrogance, only quiet assurance. The pilot hesitated, then followed her instructions. He turned the ignition key, and the helicopter engine coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life. The blade spun perfectly, humming like a new machine. Everyone gasped. their mouths open in shock. The laughter from moments before was gone. The engineers could only stare, unable to hide their surprise. And Richard himself stood frozen, his jaw almost dropping to the floor. He walked closer, his eyes wide, studying the young woman who had just done what his top engineers could not. Maya looked up at him, calm and collected, and simply said, "It just needed someone to care enough to look closely." Then, without another word, she turned and walked back to her corner, picking up her broom as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Richard felt a strange mixture of emotions: shock, respect, and unfamiliar humility. He had never been surprised like this before, never humbled by someone he had considered beneath him. The room was filled with whispers and murmurs. The engineers avoided eye contact, clearly embarrassed that their expertise had been outshone by a young girl in simple clothes. For Maya, it was just another day. She didn't seek recognition or reward. She had done what she loved, what she knew she could do, and had proven herself not just to the CEO, but to everyone in the room. Her mind was already moving to the next challenge, thinking about the scholarship she wanted, the college she hoped to attend, and the dreams that seemed so far away but now felt a little closer. Richard, however, could not forget her. Her talent, her courage, and her quiet confidence lingered in his mind. He realized that wealth and power meant nothing if one overlooked true talent and determination. He began to think about the possibilities, what Maya could achieve with the right opportunities and guidance. Later that day, Richard found himself reflecting on the incident repeatedly. He remembered the look in her eyes, the calmness of her hands, the way she had approached a problem that his expensive engineers had failed to solve. He thought about how quickly he had dismissed her because of her position, her age, and her appearance. And he felt a growing respect, a desire to make things right. Maya, on the other hand, returned to her routine, sweeping floors, cleaning rooms, and helping her mother with household chores. She didn't think about the CEO or the helicopter. She thought about her father, about the lessons he had taught her, about the joy of understanding how things worked, and about the path she wanted to carve for herself. That evening, Richard made a decision. He needed to find Maya and give her an opportunity she deserved. Not $100 million, as he had joked, but a chance to pursue her dreams, a chance to use her talent in a way that could change her life. He knew that true potential often came from unexpected places, and he had just witnessed a remarkable example. For now, though Maya's day ended quietly, her small victories unnoticed by most, but monumental to those who understood the courage, skill, and intelligence it had taken to achieve them. She had turned a mocking challenge into a triumph, proving that talent, determination, and careful thinking could overcome even the most impossible odds. And in that quiet, humble moment, Maya had done more than fix a helicopter. She had reminded everyone present that brilliance is not measured by status or wealth, but by skill, courage, and heart. Richard Cole would never forget that lesson, and neither would anyone else in the room. By the time the sun set over the estate, the story of the maid's daughter and the broken helicopter had already begun to circulate among the staff. Whispers of admiration and disbelief filled the halls. For Maya, it was simply another day of doing what she loved. But for Richard, it was the start of a journey he hadn't anticipated, one that could change both their lives forever. The morning after the helicopter incident, Richard Cole could not stop thinking about Maya. The memory of her calm hands, focused eyes, and quiet determination kept playing in his mind. He had expected a joke, a failure, or embarrassment. Yet, the young maid's daughter had solved a problem that his team of highly paid engineers could not. For the first time in years, Richard felt something he rarely experienced: genuine surprise and admiration. He sat in his office, staring at the papers in front of him, but his mind was elsewhere. The numbers, deals, and strategies that usually consumed him seemed trivial now. He thought about Maya, about her skill, and how she had quietly proven herself without seeking attention. How many talented people had he overlooked in his life, dismissing them because of their position, age, or background? The thought unsettled him. Richard asked his staff to find her. They searched the estate and finally found Maya at the library, sitting at a corner table among piles of old engineering books. Her dark hair was pulled into a braid, her hands stained with ink from taking notes, and her eyes glued to a worn-out manual. She looked up briefly when the staff mentioned her name, but returned quickly to her studying. Richard approached her cautiously, unsure how to act. Maya looked up again, noticing the CEO standing near the table. She straightened her back and smiled politely, though there was a trace of nervousness in her expression. "Good morning, Maya," Richard said, his voice softer than she had expected. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." "You're not disturbing me, sir," she replied, her voice steady but careful. She had no idea why he had come. Richard pulled out a chair and sat across from her. He studied her for a moment, seeing not just the young girl who had cleaned floors, but the determined and intelligent person she was becoming. He had never witnessed talent like hers presented so quietly and unassumingly. "Maya," he began, "what you did yesterday, it was incredible. I have to admit, I doubted you, and I was wrong. You solved a problem that many experts could not." Maya blinked, slightly embarrassed. "It was nothing, sir. I wanted to see what was wrong and fix it. I didn't mean to make anyone look bad." Richard shook his head. "You didn't make anyone look bad. You reminded me that talent doesn't care about age, status, or position. And I want to make sure you have the opportunities you deserve." He paused and then handed her an envelope. Maya looked at it curiously. Inside was a letter of recommendation addressed to one of the top engineering universities in the country. The letter praised her intelligence, skill, and determination, and it was personally signed by Richard Cole. Alongside the letter was a scholarship fund, enough to cover her tuition, books, and living expenses while she pursued her studies. Maya's eyes widened. She tried to speak, but no words came out at first. I can't accept this," she finally said, her voice trembling slightly. "It's too much, sir." Richard smiled gently. "You can, and you should. This isn't about generosity. It's about giving someone with real talent the chance to grow. You earned this, Maya. A promise is a promise." Tears welled up in her eyes, not from wealth, but from the validation of her hard work and the chance to follow her dreams. She had studied in silence for years, learning everything she could about engines and aircraft design, all without resources or formal guidance. Now, for the first time, someone believed in her completely. Over the next few months, Maya prepared to leave for university. She studied even harder, practicing advanced engineering problems and reading every book she could find. Richard kept in touch, offering guidance and encouragement. He often reminded her, "You have a gift. Use it well." At university, Maya excelled beyond expectation. Her professors were amazed at her practical knowledge and problem-solving abilities. She quickly became a leader in her class, known for her calm intelligence and creative solutions. She worked on advanced aircraft systems, learning to design eco-friendly engines and innovative flight mechanisms. Meanwhile, Richard Cole continued to follow her progress. He watched quietly as Maya grew from a shy, hard-working girl into a confident, talented young engineer. When she graduated with honors, Richard was among the first to congratulate her. He offered to invest in her ideas, knowing that her talent could lead to real innovation in aviation. Maya started her own company, focused on creating safer, more sustainable aircraft. She hired a small team of engineers who shared her passion and vision. The company grew steadily, gaining attention in the aerospace industry for its ingenuity and creativity. Richard became one of her most significant investors, not because he needed to profit, but because he wanted to support her talent and see her succeed. Years later, Maya and Richard attended a global innovation conference. She stood on stage, ready to present her latest project, a revolutionary engine design that reduced fuel consumption dramatically. The audience was filled with experts, investors, and journalists, all eager to see her work. Richard sat in the front row, quietly proud. He introduced her to the audience, recounting the story of the broken helicopter and how she had fixed it years ago. Cameras flashed as he said, "This young woman fixed my helicopter when no one else could. Today, she is leading the future of aviation." Ladies and gentlemen, Maya Cole. The audience erupted in applause. Maya smiled, not with pride, but with quiet gratitude. She had worked hard, learned endlessly, and now her efforts were being recognized on a global stage. She thought about her father, who had first inspired her love of machines, and her mother, who had always encouraged her to work hard despite the challenges. Richard watched silently, realizing that the greatest return on any investment was not money, but belief in someone's talent. He had mocked her once, expecting failure, and yet she had proven him wrong in the most remarkable way. She had taken an impossible challenge and turned it into a triumph that changed both their lives. After the conference, Maya and Richard sat together, reviewing her company's progress and discussing future innovations. Maya spoke with confidence and vision, sharing ideas that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. Richard listened, offering support and advice, but also learning from her unique perspective. In that moment, he understood something crucial. True talent and determination can come from anyone, anywhere. The girl he had once dismissed as just a maid's daughter had become a brilliant engineer, a leader, and an innovator. And all it had taken was someone giving her a chance to show what she could do. Maya's story spread beyond the conference, inspiring countless others. Young people who had never been given opportunities looked at her and realized that their background did not determine their future. Parents encouraged their children to pursue their passions, and teachers reminded their students that talent and hard work could overcome even the most challenging obstacles. For Maya, the journey was far from over. She continued to innovate, dream, and inspire. Yet she never forgot where she started, sweeping floors in a billionaire's estate, unnoticed and underestimated. That experience had taught her humility, patience, and the power of determination. Richard Cole often reflected on the day the helicopter broke down. It had been a moment of frustration for him, but it became a turning point in his life as well. He learned to recognize talent where others might overlook it, to value courage and intelligence over appearances, and to never underestimate anyone's potential. Years later, when Maya's company launched its first commercial aircraft powered by a revolutionary engine, Richard attended the inaugural flight. As he watched the plane take off smoothly, he whispered to himself, "She did it. She really did it." Maya looked at him, smiled, and said, "We did it, sir. You gave me a chance, and I worked hard to make it real." Richard nodded, feeling proud not only of her achievements, but also of the choice he had made to believe in her. He realized that success is not just about wealth or power, but about recognizing and nurturing the potential in others. And in that moment, both the CEO and the maid's daughter understood that a single act of faith, a small opportunity, and hard work could change the course of a life, and sometimes even change the world.